The phrase Overlord and Friends got a whole new meaning. Also, Springfest has been confirmed for 2022.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and it's been a while since I've been showing my face on this channel, and for anybody that is unaware what happened, and basically for anybody that isn't following me on Twitter, because I've explained this on Twitter, go follow me on Twitter, but I've been dealing with a couple of things these past few weeks, one of them being my job promotion that didn't go as smoothly as planned, and I've also been struggling with sickness for about 2+ weeks with bronchitis, which is a very nasty infection that it cripples you for a while. So luckily I've been recovering and I feel a lot better right now, also way more energetic, so I can finally do videos again and talk about the latest reveals, because we missed quite a few things. I'm not going to talk about all the missed lyrical stuff. I'm probably going to cover them once I'm going to go into their deck spotlights and whatnot. But I do want to finish up and wrap up the latest clan selection reveals, because I still need to talk about 4 reverse units. I already recorded one video right before I got sick, and I have to record the last one, so I'm gonna upload those probably more at the end of this week, and then we can go into all the other stuff like the deck spotlights and the ranking of the clan selection stuff, because there's a lot of fun things with clan collection that I still want to talk about and still want to record, so I'm gonna dive in those things. But there's also set 4, and then Lyrical Monasterio is coming on the horizon. There's a lot that we need to go over, and today we have 2 specific topics that I'm going to talk about. That's the new Overlord support, kinda, and Bushiroad Springfest 2022 confirmation, and the information that we already seen so far. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into this new ride line for Lyrical Monasterio, because we had 2 new ride lines in the upcoming set. One of we already discovered or discussed with the powerful mechanic, but now we have the friends mechanic, which is a brand new keyword that Bushiroad definitely never ever done before. But before that, let's talk about the new starter, which is this grade 0, which is Mimish Tubilia, I think. And she's basically a generic starter, which has a generic starter effect, so we can basically skip her and move along to the grade 1 of the ride line. So for the grade 1 of the ride line, we have Mimish Azarchir, I want to say, and she has the effect, or should I say the keyword effect, friend, continues to Vanguard the Vanguard circle. If you have another unit in the same column as this unit, that unit and this unit become in harmony. Sorry, friends. I don't know what came over me, but yeah, this is definitely harmony with less steps. Because for anybody that remembers harmony, because apparently Bushiroad forgot about harmony and Loris, because we have yet to get a reprint version of her in V Premium. That's besides the point. Basically, the harmony mechanic was that if you call a unit in the same column as a unit with the harmony keyword, they both become in harmony until the end of turn. In this case, you don't have to call the unit in the same column, you just need to have a unit in the same column, and they stay friends until they no longer are in the same column. Whereas harmony, you need to call a new unit every single turn, so this is essentially harmony with less steps, which is fine. But then of course, there are skills that will interact with this keyword, or interact with cards being in a friend state for the amount of cards, but you will see that once we tackle the support cards. Now her other effect is auto, when this unit is rode upon by Mimish Rikashena, call this card to the Vanguard circle. So that's essentially a 3+ for the sacrifice of 1 soul once you ride the grade 2 of the ride line on top of her. Now, if we move on to the grade 2 of the ride line, we have of course Mimish Rikashena, and her effect, of course, she has the friend keyword, but her unique effect is continuous Vanguard circle. If you have another friend, when you would ride Mimish Fortia, aka the grade 3, from your ride deck, you can ride without discarding a card from your hand. So essentially, if you have at least 1 card in friend state that isn't herself, which essentially means that if you have her column in friend state, because the back row unit is also in friend, then you get a free plus because you don't have to discard to get the card from the right deck onto your Vanguard circle. So essentially what they want you to do is write this grade 2 on top of the grade 1, use the grade 1 skill to call her in the back row behind this Vanguard, and then next turn if the unit is still there, then you can write up to the grade 3 without discarding because you have the grade 1 behind the Vanguard in the friend state alongside with the grade 2 on the Vanguard circle itself. Now of course this means that it's susceptible for retire or control effects, so this could be a bit iffy. But there's a way you can circumvent this, just like with Bruce, and that's by calling more cards to the field with the friend keyword. Because if you call an entire column also with the friend keyword, then that means you need to snipe at least 2 units to negate this effect, because it doesn't specify that the unit behind the Vanguard need to be in the friend state. You just have to have another unit in the friend state to get the free plus. Now, moving on to the grade 3 of the ride line and the big payout of this new mechanic, we have Mimish Fortia, better known as Dragonic Overlord the Friend. Because her effect is, of course, she has the friend keyword, but her other effect is on the Vanguard circle once a turn, at the end of the battle is unit attacked, if you have 5 or more other friends, which basically means you need to have an entire field filled with units, and 2 of those units in each column needs to have the friend keyword, otherwise they cannot get the entire column in the friend state, cost Counterblast 1, and discard a card from your hand, stand this unit, and it gets power plus 5k, drive -1 until the end of turn. It's basically Dragonic Overlord. It's the exact same skill as Dragonic Overlord. You get a second attack for a counterblast. The second attack will become 5k stronger, but you need to discard a card and you lose a drive check on the second swing, which essentially means for one counterblast, you will have a second Vanguard swing that doesn't plus you, but the second Vanguard swing is 5k stronger. And because you have a second Vanguard swing, you'll have more drive checks, but because it doesn't plus you, it's essentially a cycle that functions as a drive check, which is very powerful. And the added bonus on top of this card in comparison to Overlord is that you can actually attack the Vanguard twice. Because in Overlord's case, you're probably going to attack into the rearguard to forcefully activate the skill because you need to hit. In this case, you don't need to hit. The downside is, of course, you need to have an entire board filled up with units, and specifically you have 2 units with the friend keyword in each column to meet the condition, which means if you lack the draw power or the filter options to get to your specific key cards, and if you're up against control, this could be a bit problematic. But it's easy to assume that you're gonna get the skill off on your very first grade 3 turn, because you can keep the card in your hand, then swarm the board, and because it doesn't look at your opponent being at grade 3, you can basically do this while they're still at grade 2. So it could be a very aggressive deck on the very first grade 3 turn, and depending on what matchup you can go into, you can keep generating the value because you can keep resetting your Vanguard and have 4 attacks, from which 2 are Vanguard swings that comes with drive checks, which can be definitely very powerful pressure. But we also have some support cards, because if that's the only cards that we have, then it's very problematic, because the problem here is that so far the only cards with the friend keyword, which we need 2 cards in the rearguard circle to even meet the condition of this card, are vanilla rearguards, because we have the grade 1, the grade 2, and this grade 3 from the right line that have the friend keyword, and they do nothing on the rearguard circle. And the Vanguard, the grade 3, you probably want to rewrite for the persona ride cost. So this is probably the downside or the Achilles heel of this archetype, because you're reliant on these units with the friend keyword. But we have some things that can compensate for this. So let's take a look at the support cards around it. So first off, we have a dedicated grade 1 support card, which is Sound in the Wind Dukaila, or Dukaila. And Dukaila has the effect on a rearguard circle once a turn. When your unit with the friend ability is placed in the same column as this unit, if you have 3 or more other friends, cast Counter+1 and draw a card. So essentially, what this basically means, how you can meet the condition for this skill, is that you have a column in the friend status, because there's already 2 units, discards on the field, and now you call a unit in front of it with the friend keyword, and in the moment you do that, you will turn those 2 units also in the friend state, and then she will look at the other cards, which is 1, 2, and 3, and now you can pay her cost, which is cost Counter+1 to draw a card. And basically it's a Counter+1 to draw a card with extra steps. It's not great, like it's not terrible, like Counter+1 to draw a card isn't bad. Some decks actually play those skills because it's a +1, but you need to jump through some hoops to make this card work, which is kind of annoying or awkward in some instances. So depending on what the rest of the support cards are going to be, you might or might not actually play this card because she doesn't have the friend keyword herself, which makes it a bit less consistent. If she had the friend keyword, I would say easy include because she also help with meeting the condition for the grade 3, but sadly that's not the case. Just like the grade 3, she is somewhat dependent on other cards. Now a similar card like this is this grade 1, which is after school as always, Yulia. And Yulia has the effect on a Rigid Circle, when this unit boosts a friend's, this unit gets power plus 5 until the end of battle. So this card doesn't state a card with a friend ability, so basically it means that any unit that's in a friend state, she boosts that unit, she will gain 5k power, but because she doesn't have the friend keyword herself, that means you essentially need to call another unit in front of her with the friend keyword to even acquire this skill. Again, looks a little bit awkward, but this could actually be a very powerful Vanguard booster because you can slam this on turn 1 behind your grade 1 Vanguard, and if you win second, you can have powerful Vanguard swings right at the get-go because on turn 1, you have an 8+8+5, which is a 21k Vanguard swing, then the following turn you have 23k, and then with your grade 3 Vanguard, that will basically translate into a 26, and then you reset your Vanguard, lose the boost power, but it gains an additional 5k power, so you can still swing for decent second attack after that, which honestly isn't terrible. So if you want to go for more early aggression, this could actually be a solid grade 1 to run. Now another potential solid booster is this grade 3, which is Senior's Margin Altario. And Altario has the effect, continues a Rigid Circle. If this unit is friends, this unit gets boost. So if she's in a friend state, she is a booster of the same caliber of the grade 1 we just talked about. So you can basically say either want to play the grade 1 or you can say you want to play this grade 3. The difference here is that the grade 1 can be called early, as I just explained with your Vanguard attacks. This card is the grade 3, so you can only call it on turn 3, but it can work with any other card, which means you can make some very solid boosters and you can swarm the board, and at the same time, unlike the grade 1, if your front unit gets sniped, you can move her to the front row and still have a sizable attacker on the field that can still dish out sizable numbers. But the downside of this particular card, unlike the grade 1, is that you sacrifice shield value because the grade 1 has 5k shield. This doesn't. So essentially you need to weigh your options if you want to play if you even want to play one of the two cards, then you need to decide which is better, and maybe you're even gonna play them both depending on what your options are for deck building this particular ride line. And then finally we have got another support card, which honestly in my opinion is probably the best support card we've seen so far for this archetype, which is this grade 2 Cheshire Smile Larissa. And the reason why she's really good is because she has the friend keyword. So this means we have yet another card with the friend keyword, which we are so dependent on that isn't the vanilla unit, because she also has a Rigid Circle skill, which is auto Rigid Circle. When this unit attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets power plus 2k until the end of the battle for each of your other friends. So she can get upwards to plus 10k power because you have 5 other units on the field that can be in a friend state, so she can become a 20k attacker. That paired off with an 8k booster, 28k, paired off with the grade 1 or the grade 3 booster, she can become a 33k attack, not taking persona right numbers in consideration. So she could potentially be even 43k that also allow you to meet the condition for your other units that rely on friend keyword skills. So this is an essential and probably a really good support card for the ride line, and I hope we're gonna see more cards like this that have the friend keyword and at least do something on the Rigid Circle, because the more and more we have of these cards, the better the Vanguard is going to be, because the more consistent you can build the board you're so dependent on. So overall, I think the ride line in itself with the mechanic is very simplistic. It's basically Dragon like Overlord, but then a different flavor. Now, with the friend mechanic, they can make it feel a lot different than Overlord, because you can have these specific cards that interact with each other with this keyword, where you need to build a specific board. Whereas in Dragon like Overlord, it's essentially just a Vanguard, and you just want to rely on a Vanguard, and the rest of your board is basically there to support the Vanguard. In this case, it's a little bit different because your board presence also matter. So I'm very curious how this deck is going to flash out, which once we see more cards, because there's still a couple of cards left to be revealed, and I can definitely see this ride line getting a bit more support to at least flesh out the entire mechanic. Or we have to wait and see until the next set, once all these ride line gets their second support wave, because the powerful archetype I think also needs a little bit more help, but I might be missing something because I missed a couple of reveals in the last few weeks, so maybe that deck already is a lot better, but we're gonna see that once I'm gonna dive into the deck spotlights. Now, of course, this isn't the only information tidbit that we got, because also Bushiroad Springfest 2022 has been confirmed. Now, before anything, I need to clarify and I need to make a disclaimer here. Keep in mind, we are still in a pandemic situation. Of course, a lot of situations are improving, or at the very least, in some places, the restrictions are being lifted, even though the cases are still pretty high. But because of the results not being too much strain on the hospital infrastructure, at least that's what in my country is the case, they are opening more and more things. So a regional event looks to be more likely in the coming months/weeks, depending on how far your regional is planned. But still, always keep check of what the current situation is, because they can still be cancelled, or specific regionals can be cancelled if the situation worsens in the coming days or months. So keep that in mind and be a bit wary about this. Now, that disclaimer said, what we've seen so far is that Bushiroad Springfest 2022 is going to be, once again, a team league. And interesting enough, this is the very first team league with overdress, and with that there are some special interesting rulings they introduced, which I'm kind of surprised by, but I'm gonna go into that in a minute. Because for anybody that isn't aware what Team League is, it's essentially a tournament where you're going to go with two of your friends and you're gonna compete as a team, and essentially you're gonna play a round where your entire team is gonna face up against another team. So player 1 is gonna face player 1 of the other team, and player 2 against player 2, and player 3 against player 3. In some scenarios, they're gonna make it A, B, C, but it's the same situation. You're gonna play all one match, and the winner team is determined by the team that has 2 victories over the other team. So essentially, it's best out of 3, but every single game is played out by one player, and that will determine how far you're gonna go as a team. Now, of course, to not make every single team or the entire team play the same deck, there are some rules and regulations put into place to make some more diversity, to also make teams think about the choices of what type of deck, clan, or nation they want to play. So for V Premium and Premium, it's very simple. You can only take one clan per team to the tournament. So if player A is playing Royal Paladin, that means player B and player C cannot take Royal Paladin. They have to play a different clan, so each team will comprise of 3 different clans. Now for Standard, for Overdress, this isn't the case. This is a little bit different, because if they made it nation locked, that meant you need to choose 3 out of 6 nations, which isn't a lot of options, and it also can make a situation where you have 3 friends that cannot even compete together, because maybe 2 of them play the same nation, and it's not really realistic to force them to buy a new deck in order to compete in this tournament. In the Standard Overdress variant, the regulation is that you can have the same nation within a team, but you cannot use the same grade 3s in your deck. So let's say, for example, player A has Eugene as its main archetype, and player B has Nirvana. That's completely fine. You can have the same grade 1s, you can have the same grade 2s, but you cannot have the same grade 3s. So if the Eugene player was using some type of overdress engine within his deck, and he used maybe Valiente, but you also maybe even Expecta, that means that if he uses that, then a Nirvana player cannot use Valiente and Expecta in his deck. So you need to be very careful if you're gonna play the same nation within a deck or within a team, that you're not running the same grade 3s. And this doesn't only include the right deck, this also includes the main deck. So this means that in certain instances with certain nations where grade 3s are kind of mixed, taking for example, I think Hexorb Sorcerers and Bastion sometimes have similar grade 3s, like you could have Facade, you could have Lepisto that are mixed. That means that if you want to play both of those decks within a single team, you need to make a compromise where one deck takes the Facade and the other deck takes the Lepistos or something like that. You need to keep in mind that only the grade 3s need to be exclusive per player. And that's basically everything you need to know for Springfest currently so far. Like, we don't know anything about the prices, that is still going to be updated later down the line. But another very important thing is, of course, the dates and locations. Now, Well, now the dates and locations that have been revealed so far, I'm gonna put them on the screen right now. This is, from what I've understand, not a full complete list. I think there can still be more locations and more dates added later on, because also some of the locations you see so far doesn't even have a specific location, just a regional place, like maybe a country has been at least selected, or maybe a state in America, but no specific location. That still needs to be updated, and with that could also mean that maybe more regionals could be added to the list later down the line. So my advice is to check this website on a regular, so you can keep an eye out if a new regional is added that's more closer by in your proximity than any of the other that's already been added on the list. And that's basically all that we need to know for Springfest so far, at least. So grab a couple buddies, try to practice some games, determine which clan each player is going to take, and if you're going to use the same nation with its standard, then definitely try to balance out which grade freeze goes to which player, so you don't accidentally have the same grade freeze in your list, and then here on the tournament day itself that you're going to be disqualified, or at least you're not allowed to participate because you share grade freeze. Now once again, keep in mind, grade 1s, grade 2s, grade 0s, and I think even grade 4s are allowed to be shared through the deck list. But grade 3s are an exception. They need to be unique to every single deck in the entire team. But that's basically all I had today. Let me know in the comments down below if you're excited about Springfest 2022, and also what do you think of the new Dragon Link Overlord, the Lyrical Monasterio, the Friends edition. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, because they're pretty interesting. And also, what are you looking forward to in the coming days? Because there's a lot of content I need to work on. We got clan selection reviews I still need to talk about. We got clan selection reviews in general. Then of course the deck spotlights, set 4 stuff, and lyrical stuff, and even set 5 is very, very close on the horizon. So I got my work cut out for me. But with that said, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/insider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/insider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!